Ladies and gentlemen, but let's just be honest, mostly just gentlemen, and 14% of our audience that are ladies, you are also welcomed here. We are talking today about when things go wrong, but nobody steps up to the plate to make it right. Why you need a great leader in that situation, who the best leaders that we've worked with are, and we may bring back an all-in favorite, the Mount Rushmore of great leaders in our lives. This is the All-In Podcast with the 3 greatest leaders that I know and Clayton. So, in our first season of the All-In Podcast, we kind of got into a rhythm of hitting Mount Rushmore. We had some fun ones. We did like Mount Rushmore of dads.
Yeah.
Kobe and John Krasinski. We did Mount Rushmore of the greatest failures, Tim Duncan. And we've done Mount Rushmores on some of our greatest experiences in life. But we've kind of gotten away from the Mount Rushmores. But like all great things in life, you got to circle back. And so I want to bring out, to open us, your Mount Rushmore of greatest leaders. We're going to start off with first draft pick to the Oakland Raiders, Jose.
Are we each doing our own Mount Rushmore or a collective Mount Rushmore?
I don't want you to get too carried away.
Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore.
Tell me why.
Elaborate, yeah.
I learned a lot from Albus Dumbledore when I was growing up. He is someone that is doing the best that he can, or that he thinks he knows. He's someone that admits when they are wrong. He owns up to his mistakes while still trying to push people towards goodness and towards life and towards love. And he's also the most talented wizard of the century.
But he also hid from Harry that he was born to die.
Which is, he admitted that was a mistake.
That was just good leadership.
I mean, yeah, you can't tell a kid that, If you're less than 16 years old, you can't handle that.
Even if both your parents died.
He also has one of my favorite quotes that I don't have it memorized, but he has something along the lines of, this is in Harry Potter 5, Order of the Phoenix, towards the end. He says, sometimes youth forgets about the experience of the old, but the old tends to forget about the
inexperience of the youth.
No. Okay, come back to me. I'm going to Google this quote. Jamie, can you pull this quote? Jamie. Listen, Dumbledore's just a great leader.
Yeah.
All right, it's all right.
That's fair.
He sacrifices his life for the good of the wizarding world.
Waverly Place, all of them. All
the wizarding worlds. Clayton?
All right, you started us off with, I would categorize that as a somewhat silly one. You're a silly guy. Okay, I'm going to go with a more serious one here. I'm going to go with Curt Cignetti.
Oh.
Curt Cignetti. What he's done with the Indiana football program is absolutely incredible. But one of the things I loved in an interview that he did was he talked about how when he came to Indiana, he had to change the mindset of not just the players that he was playing with, but he had to change the mindset of the entire university itself. Because for whatever reason, Indiana, they're in the Big Ten, but they've never been good at football before. And so the mindset around the entire program was that, it's just, we play football. We don't win football. And he had to come in, he had to instill a mindset within every single person within the university of essentially, why not us? Why don't we believe? Why are you hiring me here in the first place if we're not here to win a national championship? And then since then, obviously they went on to go and win the national championship, but a similar thing is happening at Indiana right now that also happened at the University of Alabama. Curt Cignetti's contract is like $12 million a year or something like that.
His first contract at James Madison was $395K, and now he's getting paid $12 million to be a head coach.
Yeah.
But now they've got like 70. They had 70,000 more applications or something like that to
the university.
Yeah. And now they're going to be able to take, they've taken a lot more out of state students, which is going to allow them to bring more revenue. And his contract has already been paid for in triple because of the amount of out of state students that they've been able to take has become more competitive.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. I feel like it's the hipster answer. I feel like Nick Saban's kind of the better pick than Kurt, but
He's the new
He's the
Saban.
new Saban.
okay. Jamie got back to me just to close this out because I know our listeners are on the edge of their seat. The quote is, "Youth cannot know how age thinks and feels, but old men are guilty if they forget what it was like to be young." I think it's a great quote that applies a lot to mission on campus. All right, back to leadership. I think I think we had another episode about this. For me, someone that I've been very struck with how they led was Saint Jean the Brebeuf. Now, I wasn't there. And in his book, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue because it's not his book. It's someone else writing about his life. But the example that he set and the way that he lived mission with the Native Americans has really struck me. And so he would be on my Mount Rushmore of leadership. Is that less silly than
No, I
Dumbledore?
appreciate that. Yeah.
That was legit.
John Michael.
You pronounced it correctly this time. In the first season, you kept on mispronouncing his name.
Jean the Brebeuf?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
He said Brebeuf.
Brebeuf. Brebeuf, because he was jacked. You know, I'm gonna go a little secular here. I'm gonna call on Mr. Steve Jobs.
No.
That's
Yes.
terrible.
No, he was awful.
He had his issues. He
Yeah,
had his issues.
specifically in leadership.
He had leadership issues.
He was known for cussing out employees in the boardroom.
He was really good at building a brand, I guess.
Moving on. He's taken down. We cleaned his face off Mount Rushmore. We
Okay,
stenciled over it.
what do we think about Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick? Good leader?
The fight he gets in at the bar, absolutely. Jamie,
right.
can we pull that clip?
All right, John Mike, we've axed Steve Jobs.
Awful pick, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
We
go.
vetoed that.
I was
we're all
gonna
building
go-
this together.
Yeah,
and no.
We're together. I asked the question, and I'm struggling for answers here.
So right now
I'm fine with Albus Dumbledore next to Kurt Signetti on Mount Rushmore,
We have
but
Kurt,
I don't want Steve Jobs up
we
there.
have
Yeah.
Kurt, Jean, and Albus.
I'm gonna pull one out here, and I'm gonna say my favorite U.S. president, Millard Fillmore. You know anything about this
I
guy?
didn't even know that was the name of a
Is that
president.
a president?
Millard Fillmore. He was the U.S. president after who?
Ulysses S. Grant.
Woodrow Wilson.
Jamie, you know the answer? I thought you were a presidential guy. Zachary Taylor. President Taylor. Can you name anything about President Taylor? Wait, you guys don't know
He
anything
came
about
after
our history.
Abraham Lincoln.
I think.
How many presidents can you name in order?
In order?
Yeah.
None.
3.
I thought you were talking about
You
in
can
total.
name the first 3.
George Washington,
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson.
No.
Who's number? No, hold on. John Adams. John
Yes.
Quincy Adams. And
no, not John Quincy.
Jamie's freaking out in the back. Who's number 2?
John Adams.
Just John Adams. No Quincy.
Who's John Quincy Adams?
He was the 5th president.
Oh, he was.
I think so.
And then 3rd, Donnie T. Donnie T. No, I don't know. Basically,
Okay, Millard Fillmore. Tell us about
Millard
him.
Fillmore. The joke is that he's the most obscure U.S. president, and that he did absolutely nothing remarkable except that he was once quoted as saying that the Capitol Library is way too small.
So you've given us a bunch of fake people that you want to put on the
Yep.
Mount Rushmore.
Now we're going for real.
Yeah.
I was setting this is
I have
what,
another
this is
answer
what
for
people do.
for
You
the
build
bonus
momentum.
section.
You build momentum, and you get people involved, and then you hit them with a big one at the end.
Great.
I'm gonna go one of my heroes, Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi. He's a fellow Italian stallion. There's many of us out in the world. Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone. They may or may not be the same person. Me, Andre Bocelli,
Ooh.
and Vince Lombardi, Italian stallions, and also the guy from Godfather. You know the guy. Yeah.
What's his name?
I thought Andre Bocelli was an opera singer.
He is.
He is.
Oh.
Doesn't mean he can't make
You
good
thought he
leader.
was the guy from Godfather. So, Vince Lombardi, one of the most boring biographies I've ever read, mostly because it's 27 hours on Audible.
Ugh.
And that's at 1.2 speed. So I don't know what the inflation is there, but it's probably like 34 hours regular.
I'm a 1.4 guy.
Lombardi
Audible.
4.
1.4
Oh.
speed.
Yeah.
On Audible. Sorry. Keep going.
This podcast is going great. It's going wonderful. Vince Lombardi, if you don't know his story, was born into a poor Italian Catholic family in inner city New York. His dad owned a small sub shop, Jersey Mike's. No, just kidding. But basically, they had nothing. And Vince Lombardi was always undersized. He was a nose tackle, even though he was like less than 6 foot. Played low key college football, but was just a grinder and highly competitive, and was known for having a knack for pulling talent out of people who didn't have much talent. He was one of those characters who wasn't a high profile athlete, but because he was so smart, he worked his way up the ladder. Analyst positions, coordinator positions, small schools. Finally got a job at a major conference at the college level, and then was given the opportunity to move up to the NFL. And when he was hired as the head coach of the Packers, many people were like, this is one of the worst hires in the NFL. The Packers were a low market team, still are. Shout out to our Packers fans. And they had basically never done, they were kind of the laughing stock of the NFL up to that point. And Lombardi took a team that didn't have much money, was playing in a market that was the smallest U.S. market at the time and still is to this day, and turned the Green Bay Packers from a bottom dweller of professional sports to now one of the teams in professional sports that
historic,
everyone identifies as kind of the face of American professional athletics. I mean, he recruited and drafted some of the best players in NFL history. Bart Starr, probably the first great NFL quarterback. He also, a little burn in the back of the throat. He also was pivotal in changing the way offense was being played at the time. So if you look at those old videos, it was the old wingback formation, kind of like Navy, Army, Air Force style triple option. And he was pivotal in kind of starting to move the ball down the field through 5, 10, 15-yard outs. And just an incredible leader. His famous speech, "What It Takes to Be Number One," my dad had on a plaque in our home office growing up. And I just always would read it. And even as a young kid, just be like, that is what leadership looks like. It is drawing talent out of people who maybe don't think they do. And his famous quote is, "Being number one isn't the only thing." No, winning isn't the only thing. Winning is not just a thing, it's the only thing.
We got there.
This is the All In podcast where we misquote all the important ones.
Okay, but now that I've had a little time to think,
Great pick, by the way, John Michael.
that is a great pick.
Did I save myself?
And I think the person that I'm thinking of, very similar, is Greg Popovich, who is also known for finding talent in the most unconventional types of people and players, who is known for his leadership style is all about connecting with his players, right? All of his players want to play for him. Goes to one of the smallest markets in the NBA, turns them into one of the greatest franchises in the NBA. And yeah, he's just a good leader. You read any article about, there's not a single negative thing that anyone has ever said about Greg Popovich as a coach. But you read all these articles about coaching, what it took to win 5 championships, all of these things. And I feel like, at least what I remember, especially growing up in San Antonio, what I hear the most is, what made the Spurs special, what made Greg Popovich special, is he always prioritized team dinners and connecting with the players and the players connecting with each other. I think that's amazing.
I love it.
Like, as a leader, his main priority was not winning. Now, it was probably a top priority, but his main priority was knowing his players, knowing what they brought to the table, and highlighting those strengths to make sure that everyone had a spot on the team.
That's a good pick.
Yeah.
What was a worse pick for Mount Rushmore? Clayton picking Tenet on his Mount Rushmore of movies, or me picking Steve Jobs on our Mount
Well,
Rushmore
that's
of
one of the
leaders.
best
No,
leaders
you
of
don't
all
get it.
time.
Like Tenet spelled backwards is still Tenet.
Say,
Like the
say no
movie.
more. Say no more. So we've been joking about leaders and we've been identifying some great ones. But what I want to get to for the meat and potatoes of the episode is, even if you don't want to be a leader, leadership is going to find you anyway. Here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes, responsibility and leadership show up whether you volunteer for it or not. Leadership, we think, is maybe like a formal title. You know, what we identified here in our Mount Rushmore were people who had leadership positions, head coaches of programs, CEOs. St. John de Brebeuf, kind of the leader of the Jesuits in the New World. But one of the most important qualifiers for leadership is not a title, it's influence. And so for people that do not have a title, you look up to people who show certain qualities. Maybe it's a spirit of calmness in the face of adversity. Maybe it's a willingness to take charge of a situation. Maybe it's just capacity or capability to be someone who, when a gap exists, that you're the one to take the initiative to step in. It doesn't necessitate a title. Sometimes it comes with it, but it produces a responsibility to step into the void. And I'm curious for y'all, have you worked with people either professionally, maybe it was growing up, that didn't necessarily have that title, like a head coach or a CEO or a business leader or a president or a saint, but who showcase leadership in a profound way?
Can you repeat that question?
Who do you know that stepped into leadership without a title,
Yeah.
but has led anyway?
I'm trying to think of some good examples in my life.
I think one that comes to mind for me is my grandfather. So he fought in Korea, fought in the Korean War. He's the youngest of 14 children, born to Vito, great name, and his mother. And his mother died in childbirth with him. So his dad was left with 14 children, a widower, and a lot of mouths to feed on a poor strawberry farm in rural Louisiana. Jose, you ever heard of Independence, Louisiana?
I have.
It's north of New Orleans.
Yeah.
Kind of as you move up into northern Louisiana. And my grandfather, as the youngest of 14, was cast right away into helping out the family. So he would pick strawberries outside in the farm. He would carry the strawberries on his back to market, to sell, to make money for the family. And as his older brothers were moving on and leaving the family, most of his brothers actually fought in World War II. He became cast into kind of the leader of his family, even though he was the youngest. So he had 9 older brothers, and then there was 4 girls, and then there was 2 boys and my grandfather. And my grandfather talks about how even though he had other boys at home, he was the one who naturally took charge as the older boys graduated and moved on. And it's cool because you see that leadership in him growing up and taking part in family life and, you know, being able to provide for the family. But then he went and fought in Korea, and he was 18 years old. And it's crazy to think about because I would not feel comfortable with most 18-year-olds I know fighting for our country. But looking back then, it was probably his hardened life that prepared him for such a moment. And when he was fighting in Korea, he was a Marine infantryman. And as he was, they were taking a hill in Korea. They were trying to take the high ground, like Anakin. He stepped on a landmine, and it blew off his entire left leg.
Like Anakin. Sorry.
There is a lot of analogies here. Like Anakin, he was also the chosen one.
Oh, that was good.
That might have been top moments of the podcast right there. Yeah, be on the top 10. But he stepped in right away, and he was laying on the ground with his leg blown off, and one of his infantrymen came and put him on his back and carried him all the way back, and he spent 6 months in a naval hospital getting rehabilitated, and then he has to re-enter life. And he's 20 years old. He has a prosthetic leg in the 1950s, which I have to imagine is probably not very comfortable. And he married my grandmother and started a family. But because of his prosthetic leg, he was denied at a lot of factory and industry jobs because he was disabled. And so he took a job as a wood shop teacher at a public high school. Not the sexiest job in the world, doesn't make the most money, but he created this beautiful life for his family. They had 6 kids, my dad being one of them. And he was such an example to me. He's still living. He's 96 years old and still walking around on a prosthetic leg that he got, 76 years ago. And his name's Lawrence Michael Lucido Sr. And my dad's Lawrence Michael Lucido Jr. My parents skipped me. Not sure why. We'll talk to them about that later. But then we named our son Lawrence Michael Lucido III because we wanted him to showcase the same leadership without a title that my grandfather showcased throughout his life. And that's something, stepping into responsibility, that I want my kids and myself to emulate.
It's a great story.
That is wonderful.
I just speaking about Deacon Larry. I think maybe I might have told the story before on the podcast, but he was a deacon at St. Monica, and he would always ride a bike by all the windows of the school, and he had a little license plate on the back of his bike that said Groovy on it, and he would wave at all the kids
what a stud.
Through the windows as like we were starting our school day. And then, I knew him very impersonally then, and then got to know Deacon Larry. I've spent a little bit of time with him just interacting with your family. But you telling that story, I think, when I think of Deacon Larry Lucido, what I think about is that he's a man of joy.
Mm-hmm.
He is truly a man of joy. And just, hearing you tell that, I'm like, wow, he, the hardships that he had to go through, not only just growing up, in his family life, but then having to go to Korea, and then, immediately, coming back from Korea, having to deal with the hardships of how do I get a job when I have this, disability. It's amazing that he wasn't, he didn't grow resentful, even in the midst of that.
I wonder if it's just as that generation of men has, slowly passed on. I think they're called the greatest generation, is kind of how they're identified in generational terms. It's so sad because they went through so much. Like that generation went through, probably a lot of them the Great Depression. A lot of them either fought in World War II or Korea. And then they had to make a life for themselves as the country's reeling and trying to find its identity. They're trying to create a life of safety for their kids from a life that they never had. And my grandmother, his wife, passed away just a couple months ago. And it's just really got me thinking of how much I wish my kids could have more time with that generation.
Yeah.
My favorite thing growing up was we just sit at my grandpa's feet and just have him tell us stories. And some of his stories were just unbelievable. Riding cows out in the pasture. He almost drowned in a creek because he got bit by a water moccasin and started having a reaction. And then his brothers rescued him. It was just like every day in their life was an adventure. And I wonder if that is what created these leadership qualities in these men that, frankly, as I look at our generation who hasn't gone through some of those things, they had World War II, we had COVID. And, people are like, oh my gosh, COVID was so hard. Compared to what those men went through, we were stuck in our house looking at our computer all day, not fighting for our lives every day, trying to put food on the table. What do you think this generation is lacking that greatest generation had the opportunity to have?
Well, what's the saying? I'm going to butcher it right now.
I think we're talking about the same.
Hard. Yeah, go for it.
Hard times create great men. Great men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think we are in that cycle?
I think we have moved from great men have created good times. Good times have created weak men. And that is kind of where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're back to your original question, it was, what is our generation lacking? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What are they lacking in compared to that generation?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the experiences that they had?
The shared hardship.
The shared hardship?
It's got to be part of it. Maybe not the whole equation, but a big part. Yeah.
Is there a way to create those opportunities without living in a dust bowl in rural Kansas?
My brain initially goes to, well, I also wonder what role technology plays in this, right? You're talking about your grandpa, all these adventures. Would those adventures be there if there was an option to be on an iPad, right? Or to watch TV or whatever, where it's like, and maybe this goes back to the hardships, right? Of like the parents were going through hard things. His dad was going through hard things. So it forced the kids to like be outside a lot and to be working and to be helping out the family. But those are the two things I think of like shared hardship, but also what has technology done to us that we prefer that. And maybe it goes back to like the lack of hard things by distracting ourselves with technology or with whatever it may be.
That was, you're kind of hitting on a little bit of what I was thinking about, which is just that in every generation, in every life that's lived, there's an invitation to embrace the cross. You know, for your grandfather's generation, there was an invitation. There was a widespread, not just cultural invitation to embrace the cross, but that you couldn't not embrace the cross in that moment. You know, he was called up to Korea, and that was something that he had to do as part of his duty and responsibility. That there was no avoiding it, and he had to face it head on. And I think perhaps something that exists because of technology and just the comfort that we have in our culture and society right now is that there are crosses that are looking at us in the face every single day of our life, but it's very, very easy to hide from them. It's very, very easy to escape from them.
That reminds me of a story that one of the best, if not the best leader I ever worked on there used to love telling the story of I might butcher it a little bit. There was a man, I can't remember, maybe Vietnamese, that when he was in Vietnam, Catholic, was captured by the Communist Party, and would get tortured a lot in order for him to apostatize and to leave the faith. And he never did. Like not once throughout all the years of capture, torture, all these things, he never did. He eventually got out, moved to America, had kids, and slowly but surely, with just like the comforts of life that he had now, again, I'm butchering the story, he slowly started to like give in to certain things, right? He slowly started to like, well, maybe I could do this and well, maybe I could go walk my daughter to school. I don't have time to go to mass anymore. Not a bad thing, but it just kind of kept building up to within 2 years, this man was like not even going to Sunday mass anymore. And I think, again, not the best retelling of that story, but it kind of hits what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
When he was in Vietnam, captured, being tortured, the cross was in front of him. There was no option but to face it and to embrace it. Versus when he got stateside, the comforts of our culture, right? He was able to kind of get distracted from the cross. And that's when like things started to fall apart. And again, the story he would say my old manager would say a lot was like what communism couldn't be out of him, our culture stole from him without even trying.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it hits on what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
The cross was no longer in front of him. Mm-hmm. And I feel it in my own life. When I'm going through something really hard, that's usually when I feel the closest to our Lord. But when I'm not going through something really hard that's right in front of me, that's when it's really easy to get distracted and not embrace the cross.
Right.
Is that what you were getting at?
Exactly.
That quote scares the poo-poo out of me for our, we get the clean podcast here. Because that is like going back to the question of what has happened to our generation. This is what's happened. We, and I'll say we because we're included in that, have been lulled to sleep by comfort, and men are desperately in need of a battle to fight. And when they don't have a battle to fight, that's when they lose their desire for leadership. When they don't feel a need to lead, then they won't. And when they feel like they're being lulled to sleep and everything's great and everything's comfortable, what's there to lead? Instead, I'm going to, grab a scar on Fortnite and grab a chug jug, and that's going to try to...
What do you say?
What's a chug jug?
Chug jug.
A chug jug.
Chug jug.
I thought you said chug chug.
What are you saying here? Where's this going?
Basically,
I got lost when you said Fortnite. I forgot everything you said leading up to it.
Our grandparents were fighting real wars, and now we have a generation of men who are playing wars on video games.
Mm-hmm.
And not even real wars, but wars with building materials and fake guns and, piñatas and
cool skins,
and they can turn into a monster. And it's insane. And why are people attracted to that? Well, they're attracted because they need a battle to fight in their lives. And so what they're getting in a video game is kind of an empty void of the actual desire that's deeply rooted in them, which is a desire to lead, a desire to fight, and a desire to find a battle that is worth engaging
Mm-hmm.
in.
Well, I think the reality is that for your grandfather, going back to Deacon Larry here, is that there was a very obvious war, a very obvious battle that was in front of him. And I think what's scary is that there's I think to us, there's a very obvious war and battle that's raging all around us at any given time. But for many people, it's a silent war. They don't know that it's going on, and that's been, part of our role within Focus, the missionary apostolate organization that we work for, is how do we wake people up to see that God is real, that there's a reality of, people losing their faith, people losing what it means to be human, people losing what it means to be, a part of a family. And we're slipping very, very silently into a culture of death, a culture of isolation, a culture that's anti-family and anti-life. And how do you wake people up to that, to see, hey, this, there's a battle going on, and you have a role to play in this. You've got to step into that. And going back to the idea of the cross, leadership is a burden. Leadership is a cross, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with your title. Anyone can be a leader, because, for a leader is someone who has woken up to the fact that their life is about the laying down of their own life and the service to other people around them. And it doesn't matter if you're at the top of an organization and you've got thousands of people to lead. There are always opportunities to serve the people in your life, to bring them joy, to meet them where they're at, to go out of your way to do something for them, to help them. And it's like, gosh, how do we invite people to that in a way that is, where there's a great challenge in front of you, there's a great burden in front of you, but there's also a great joy waiting for you even in the midst of that.
And I think you actually answered the question for us, which is, what is this generation lacking? This generation is lacking that reminder. They're lacking the reality. If you wake them up, they will come alive in Christ and step into Christ-like leadership in a way that they never thought before. My favorite moments of evangelization and sharing the faith with others are our annual conference called Seek. We have an all men's session, and this year at the all men's session, the MC did this thing where he got the men to do like a war cry is not the right term because that kind of sounds cringy, but it was like he was like, I want you to grunt like an animal but also scream, and it turned into hoo, and he would just say, give me one, and the whole crowd would go hoo. He'd go, give me another hoo. Now give the speaker one hoo. And it just became this thing where every time he would get up there, he would go, give me one. And all 6,000 college men would stand up and go, hoo. And so there's a reality to when you awaken a man to a battle cry, and a battle cry doesn't have to be as serious as the world is ending and you need to pick up a sword. The battle cry can be as simple as your wife needs you to be present. Your kids need you to be present. That's your battle cry. That's your battle cry, and go out and get it. And I was thinking as you were talking, and we've been talking about war, why do men love movies about war? Why is every football pregame speech about we're going into war to fight the enemy? And, even boardrooms, CEOs talk about the great battle between companies. It's because men respond to a narrative and a pedagogy of the great battle. And so if a football team is using that analogy and it's effective, and a CEO is using that analogy and it's effective, then we should be using that analogy to awaken a generation of men and show them that whether you're an infantryman, an enlisted officer, a second lieutenant, or the captain of the whole thing itself, we need you. We got to have you, because it's a losing battle and we need as many soldiers on the field as possible.
How do you make that seem urgent, I guess? When you're thinking about World War II, that seems urgent. There's something that's very obviously life or death right in front of me. But I think I've experienced this when you're just going through your day to day, it's like, doesn't really seem like it's every decision I make is make or break, life or death. What does that look like to be able to maintain that fervor and that zeal for fighting the battle that's waging within your own heart and then also in the culture at large?
General Hoseby.
I'm thinking. How do we kind of make it seem urgent? Is that what you're saying?
I guess, I'm thinking of the word zeal here, to be on fire, and it's like, yeah, I'm willing to do anything and sacrifice my life for the Lord and for, the kingdom of God. And, going through your day to day, going to work, which, means, going to an office. Jose, you and I work remotely. So we walk into our office and we log on to things, and there's, sometimes there's really important things that we're doing, and sometimes there's admin work, and then you get home and you have a little, it's, Taco Tuesday, and you change a diaper, and it's like, yeah, you don't really feel all the time like there's there's a great fervor and urgency for you to respond to, this great call to adventure and the challenge of leadership and being a man, in the same way as you might have felt, Deacon Larry fighting in Korea.
Yeah, you say that, and my first thought is like, man, I don't know, because I struggle with that too.
For sure,
right?
Yeah. I mean, we all do.
And what I'm losing my train of thought here. Yeah, I struggle with that too. And I look on my life, and it's like, when I feel like I'm being my best self is whenever I have a lot on my plate. Whenever I don't have an option but to show up. There's no other option but for me to actually be the man, be the leader that I need to be. But I don't know how that creates a sense of urgency, because you're right. Whenever I'm just answering a Teams message, or whenever I'm just changing a poopy diaper, or I'm just taking John Henry out on a walk so that my wife can cook, like that doesn't strike the same chord.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thought I have is, I think we just have to name the reality for people when we're trying to get them motivated to participate, that frankly, it's not urgent. Like, let's just call it what it is. Your family is not at stake today. But the wrong time to participate is when it becomes urgent. And so if you don't do anything to form your children, you're going to see the effects of that today a little bit. You may see the effects of it next week, next couple months, next couple years. I'll tell you when you're really going to feel it. When they're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 30. And so while it may not feel urgent to the present moment, when we get home tonight and we see our kids and they're not talking about, all the horrible moral decisions that they're making or how they're going to marry someone that we don't like. No, it's not urgent today. But we know it's urgent because we want to recognize that when it comes time for it to be urgent and it's right in front of you, guess what? It's probably too late.
I remember my thought now, and it's similar to that. I came across this a lot when I was in college and in my early days post grad, and even when I was working as a missionary with my students. We romanticize the big decisions, right? And I used to think this a lot, like, man, like, I want to be a martyr.
Yeah.
Like, if someone tells me to apostatize out, I'm going to say no, and then they'll cut my head off.
Mm-hmm.
But when I have to say no to myself at 6 a.m. on my way to class, I am not willing to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I romanticize these big things, but in all these little ways that Jesus invited me to say yes to him, I say no. So it's like, how can I expect myself to say yes in the biggest moment when I'm not even willing to say yes in the small things? And I think this goes back to what you're saying, right? Right now, it's the small things. Right now, my kid is 5 months. He doesn't talk about anything, And it's like, well, how's it? Me changing his diaper not going to affect anything. But it's like, yeah, again, there's all these small invitations right now to accept the cross of my life that are going to add up and are going to matter when John Henry's 20, when he's 30, when our future kids are that age, God willingly. But if I'm not willing to enter into that now, if I'm not willing to embrace that cross now, how do I expect myself to embrace that cross when it's much harder?
Right.
And so I think what we need when we are lulled to sleep with the reality that it's not urgent today, it may not be urgent tomorrow, but it may be urgent in a few years or a few months, or when that big decision comes, is daily reminders. Daily reminders that there's a battle at place, that it needs leaders, it needs captains. We're called to participate. And so something I love is the speech, The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. So to close the podcast, I'm going to read it, and we're going to end there, because this is something that I like to listen to as that reminder of the mundane of my life, that something is actually at stake. And so if you're a listener and you feel like your life isn't urgent today, find something, a daily reminder. Maybe it's a song, maybe it's a Bible verse, maybe it's the Man in the Arena that reminds you of the battle that you're going to fight. So here we go. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong men stumble, or whether the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, but who comes up short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and no effort without shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, great devotion, who spends himself for a worthy cause day in and day out, who at the best knows that in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while he dares greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor know defeat. Theodore Roosevelt. This is the All In Podcast, and we are three men who want to be in the arena day in and day out. If you're a man who wants to join us, then make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, make sure to comment, and most importantly, make sure to share with a brother, with a friend, with a mentor who you love, who you respect, and who you want to be a leader with you in that arena day in and day out. We want to take our lives seriously, and we want to do it with you, all in together. This is the All In Podcast. We'll see you in the next one.